Lieutenant Colonel Bruce Hinton checked his airspeed and held it at 300 knots. Slow for a Sabre. Deliberately slow. He had ordered his flight of 4 F-86s to fly the way an F-80 would. Same altitude, same speed, same radio call signs. If the MiG pilots watching from above Manchuria recognized anything unusual, they would stay on their side of the Yalu River. Hinton needed them to cross. It was December the 17th, 1950. 6 weeks earlier, a Soviet-built fighter had appeared over Korea and turned every aircraft in the American inventory into a target. The swept-wing MiG-15 could outclimb, outrun, and outshoot anything the United Nations had in the sky. Pilots who had owned the air since June were now the ones being hunted. Hinton had 4 jets and a deception. The MiGs above him had 6 weeks of unchallenged dominance, and crews who believed with good reason that no American fighter could touch them at altitude. Before we continue, I need to ask a small favor. Cold War Impact is a small Cold War and military history channel, and recently our reach and views have dropped significantly. If you enjoy well-researched history videos like this one, please consider subscribing, leaving a comment, and sharing the video. Every interaction helps the channel reach new viewers and allows me to keep making these deep dive history documentaries. Now, back to Korea. On November 1st, 1950, the air war over Korea changed in under 2 minutes. 8 MiG-15s of the Soviet 50th Fighter Aviation Division dropped through the clouds above the Yalu River and dove on a formation of 15 American F-51 Mustangs flying close air support near Sinuiju. First Lieutenant Fyodor Chizh, a Soviet Air Force pilot wearing no insignia and flying an aircraft painted in Chinese markings, locked onto the trailing Mustang and opened fire. First Lieutenant Aaron Abercrombie never saw the attack. His propeller-driven fighter, the same type that had escorted bombers over Berlin 5 years earlier, came apart under cannon fire from a jet doing 670 miles per hour. Later that afternoon, MiG-15s attacked a flight of F-80 Shooting Stars, the Air Force's frontline jet fighter. First Lieutenant Semyon Kominich was credited by Soviet records with destroying the F-80C flown by First Lieutenant Frank van Sickle. In a single day, the MiG-15 had proven it could kill both the best propeller fighter and the best jet fighter the United States had in the theater. And nobody on the American side knew who was flying them. What nobody in Far East Air Force's headquarters understood that week was that the engine inside every MiG-15 had been built from blueprints handed to Moscow by a British cabinet minister 4 years earlier. And the one American fighter capable of matching the MiG was sitting on air bases 6,000 miles away, held back by generals who refused to release it. The MiG-15 had been designed for one job: kill bombers. Its 2 23mm cannons and a single 37mm cannon threw explosive shells that could rip apart a B-29 Superfortress in a single pass. Its swept wings, angled at 35 degrees, gave it a speed advantage over every straight-wing jet in existence. It climbed at over 9,000 feet per minute and reached a ceiling above 50,000 feet, beyond what any American fighter could touch. Within days, B-29 formations that had bombed North Korea unopposed since July were being intercepted and driven off. The MiGs operated from air bases across the Yalu in Manchuria, Chinese territory the United Nations was forbidden to strike. They climbed in sanctuary, crossed the river, hit the American formations, and retreated before anyone could follow. American pilots named the corridor of sky along the Yalu MiG Alley. The name held because the MiGs owned it. The Air Force threw its best available jet at the problem immediately. F-80 Shooting Stars were ordered to engage the MiGs head-on. On November the 8th, First Lieutenant Russell Brown fired on a MiG-15 during a swirling dogfight over Sinuiju and claimed the first jet versus jet kill in history. The Air Force publicized it around the world. Decades later, Soviet records revealed the MiG returned to base. The kill never happened. The real milestone came the following day. On November the 9th, Lieutenant Commander William T. Amon of Fighter Squadron 111, flying an F-9F Panther off the carrier Philippine Sea, shot down Captain Mikhail Grachev of the 139th Guards Fighter Aviation Regiment. Grachev was killed. It was the first confirmed aerial victory of one jet over another in the history of air combat. But it changed nothing strategically. The Panther was a straight-wing naval fighter that could not survive at the altitudes where the MiGs lived. The F-80 was 100 miles per hour slower than the MiG above 30,000 feet. Every American jet in the theater was the wrong answer to the question the MiG had posed. The fighter that had seized control of Korean skies owed its existence to a decision made in London in 1946. Soviet jet engine technology was years behind the West. Designers in Moscow were producing unreliable copies of captured German turbojets that lacked the thrust for a modern fighter. Aviation Minister Mikhail Khrushchev and designer Alexander Yakovlev urged Stalin to approach Britain about buying the Rolls-Royce Nene, the most advanced turbojet in the Western world. Stalin reportedly asked what fool would sell his enemies such a weapon. He approved the request anyway. The Labour government of Prime Minister Clement Attlee agreed. Sir Stafford Cripps, president of the Board of Trade, authorised the export. Between late 1946 and the spring of 1947, Rolls-Royce shipped 25 Nene engines to Moscow. Soviet engineers trained at the Rolls-Royce factory in Derby. The sole condition was that the engines not be used militarily. Moscow ignored it entirely. Klimov Bureau engineers reverse-engineered the Nene into the RD-45, then refined it into the VK-1. That engine powered the MiG-15. The aircraft killing Allied airmen over Korea ran on a British engine sold under the promise it would never see combat. The pilots inside those MiGs were not Chinese volunteers or North Korean trainees. They were active duty officers of the Soviet Air Force, assigned to the 64th Fighter Aviation Corps, an elite formation assembled from air defense divisions that had protected Moscow during World War II. Colonel Ivan Kozhedub, the highest-scoring Allied ace of the war with 62 victories, commanded one of its divisions but was forbidden by Stalin from flying combat. The risk of losing the Soviet Union's greatest living pilot was too high. At its peak, the Corps numbered 26,000 personnel. Pilots wore Chinese uniforms, flew aircraft in foreign markings, and carried cards with Korean radio phrases in Cyrillic. The cards were useless. Under fire, pilots screamed in Russian. American signals intelligence confirmed Soviet involvement as early as March 1951. Washington said nothing. Admitting that Americans and Soviets were killing each other risked a direct war between nuclear powers. On the American side, the weapon to match the MiG had been ready for over a year. North American Aviation's F-86 Sabre had first flown in October 1947. Its swept-wing design, drawn from captured German research, gave it the same high-speed edge that made the MiG deadly. Its 650 caliber machine guns could saturate a target at convergence range. Its A1CM radar gun sight, linked to an ANA PG-30 ranging radar, computed target distance and adjusted the aiming reticle automatically. The Soviets had nothing like it. The Sabre had been operational since 1949. But in November 1950, every available F-86 sat on bases inside the continental United States. Air Defense Command held them to guard against Soviet bombers crossing the Arctic. The jet that could fight the MiG was being kept home for a war that had not started, while pilots died in one that had. On November 8th, the same day Brown filed his disputed MiG claim, the Air Force ordered the 4th Fighter Interceptor Wing to Korea. The wing was based at Newcastle County Airport in Wilmington, Delaware. Its 3 squadrons, the 334th, 335th, and 336th, flew the F-86A. Most of its pilots had survived combat over Europe and Japan in World War II. The Sabres were disassembled, loaded aboard the escort carrier Cape Esperance, and shipped across the Pacific. The carrier reached Japan on December 1st. The aircraft were uncrated, rebuilt, test-flown, and ferried to Kimpo Airfield near Seoul. The first Sabres touched down at Kimpo on December the 15th, 45 days after the MiG-15 had killed its first American pilot over the Yalu. Hinton's plan on the morning of December the 17th was built on one calculated lie. He ordered his 4-ship flight to cruise at 300 knots, well below the Sabre's capability, and to transmit on F-80 call signs. To any MiG pilot monitoring American frequencies, the formation looked like another patrol of slow, vulnerable shooting stars. The bait worked. 4 MiG-15s crossed the Yalu and dove on what they believed were easy kills. Hinton waited until the lead MiG committed to its attack angle. Then he pushed the throttle forward, pulled into a climbing turn that no F-80 could have survived, and brought the radar gun sight onto the MiG's fuselage. His .50 caliber rounds struck the MiG-15 at convergence distance. The Soviet-built fighter rolled, trailing a ribbon of black smoke, and dove into the hills below. The remaining 3 MiGs broke off and ran for the river. The engagement was over in seconds. First confirmed Sabre kill of a MiG-15. 6 weeks of unchallenged MiG dominance ended in a single firing pass from a jet the enemy did not know existed. Within days, MiG Alley became contested airspace for the first time. The 4th Fighter Interceptor Wing flew daily patrols along the Yalu, and the MiGs that had attacked American formations at will now faced a fighter that could meet them at speed and altitude. The Sabre was faster in a dive. Its hydraulic controls and all-moving tailplane gave it handling near the speed of sound that the MiG could not match. American pilots wore G-suits that let them sustain harder turns without blacking out. The MiG kept its advantages in climb rate, ceiling, and the raw destructive power of its heavy cannons. But the imbalance that had defined the previous 6 weeks was gone. Pilots who had spent weeks avoiding MiG Alley were now flying into it looking for a fight. The war's air-to-air statistics were classified, revised, and disputed for decades. The Air Force originally claimed 792 MiG kills against 78 Sabres lost, a ratio of roughly 10-1. The number became one of the most repeated statistics of the Cold War. It was also wrong. Post-war Air Force reviews cut the figure to around 5-1. Independent researchers working with American, Soviet, and Chinese records brought it lower. A 2008 RAND Corporation study concluded that the actual kill ratio was approximately 1.8-1 overall, and closer to 1.3-1 against MiGs flown by Soviet pilots. Analysts Dildy and Thompson found the Sabres achieved only about 1.4-1 against the elite Soviet 303rd and 324th Fighter Aviation Divisions, but nearly 9-1 against less trained Chinese and North Korean units. The aircraft were closely matched. The difference was training, tactics, and a radar gun sight the other side did not have. Moscow denied Soviet involvement for nearly 40 years. The silence broke in 1989 under Glasnost, when veterans began publishing accounts of their service in MiG Alley. General Georgy Lobov and Ace Colonel Yevgeny Pepelyayev were among the first to speak publicly. Full archival confirmation came only after the Soviet Union dissolved in December 1991. On September 21, 1953, 2 months after the armistice, North Korean Senior Lieutenant No Kum-sok defected by flying his MiG-15BIs directly to Kimpo and landing among the Sabres. He received $100,000 under Operation Moolah. When American engineers opened up the captured jet, they found it lighter and in some respects more efficient than their own fighter. They also found a Klimov Vav-K, one engine whose lineage traced directly to a Rolls-Royce Nene that had left Derby, England 7 years earlier, under the condition it would never power a weapon of war. Today, the Korean People's Army Air Force operates an estimated 35 to 40 MiG-29s as its most capable fighters, airframes delivered by the Soviet Union in the late 1980s and never modernized. The remainder of the fleet runs on MiG-23s, MiG-21s, and Chinese-built copies of 1950s designs. South of the demilitarized zone, the Republic of Korea Air Force flies F-35A stealth fighters, F-15K Slam Eagles, and the new KF-21 Boromai, whose first series production aircraft rolled out at Sashon in March 2026. American F-16s remain at Osan Air Base, 50 miles from the border. The qualitative gap in the air has reversed completely from 1950. North Korea cannot realistically contest the skies over the peninsula. The question that December 1950 answered, what happens when one side finally fields the aircraft the other cannot match, still governs the logic of deterrence above the 38th parallel. The MiG-15 owned Korean skies for 6 weeks because the Air Force kept the Sabre at home. Hinton ended that with 4 jets, a faked call sign, and a gun sight the Soviets never saw coming. The ceasefire line has not moved since 1953, and the air above it has never gone uncontested again.